Welcome everyone to Planetary Intelligence. I have a very beautiful and amazing human, divine spirit, being, soul joined us today. Joel Schaefer, who talks about a lot about the shamanic ways, the Toltec wisdom, and awareness, purification, and dreaming. And um, I've had a journey with Joel's work through his interviews on Syncretism Society and with Jason from Archaics, who you all know I've done a recent podcast with, and he's brought to my attention many beautiful things in terms of the Toltec wisdom and the especially dreaming and recapitulation. So, Joel, without any further ado, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you, brother, and thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for the invite. And yeah, I appreciate you saying nice things and welcome. Happy to be here, man. Good to connect with you.
Absolute joy, brother. Thank you. I wanted to start off with for you, what I know you've talked about it many times, but what is dreaming exactly for you? Because a lot of people may misinterpret
Totally.
that word, you know.
Yeah. It's Toltec struggle to find words that are appropriate because some of the words are already being used to mean other things. So the common concept of dreaming is just, having dreams. But for Toltec's, dreaming is a means to reach other realms. It's a portal. It's a threshold to cross. And for Toltecs, there are dreaming gates that they learn to approach and learn to eventually prepare themselves to move beyond. And it takes a significant focus. Dreaming the way Toltecs dream is really difficult. And it is for a reason, because it's very actually dangerous to open yourself up if you are not a warrior, if you're not prepared, if you haven't cleaned up your life, if you haven't learned how to use your will to a degree. You see athletes or certain people that are really pushing it in the physical world that have developed really unique levels of coordination. And it's not the same as sorcery or shamanic power. It's different, but you can get an idea of that, what it would be like, by just paying attention to people who become truly gifted with their physicality in martial arts. Old school martial arts used to be an energetic thing where you pretty much, if you're going to run a school, you had to be somewhat of an awakened being, almost sorcery style, to be able to keep your dojo running, because someone would come challenge you and take your students, and if you didn't have the energetic upper hand, then you would lose your career as a teacher. So it used to be much more intense. And there's types of dreaming. There's dreaming awake, where you're having altered states while you're functioning within this particular dream that we're in, right? So you can have really incredible heightened awareness experiences while being fully awake, just doing normal tasks, or getting into the wilderness and opening up your perception and having really magical adventures where you're sort of going into other layers of perception and coming back into this one. But if you can learn to control your dreams at night while you're fully have moved into different intense dreamscapes, you can do incredible things like fall asleep in one dream, wake up in another, and then fall asleep in a dream again, wake up, and now you're 3 layers deep, and you're going to experience something that's so intense that it'll scare the shit out of you and wake you up really quickly. And so it takes years and years to get used to these jolts that will happen if you learn to control your dreams. There's all kinds of things that you can use. If you read the Castaneda books, you'll learn about the really unique opportunities there are to learn how to use items in your dreams and follow them, and those items will actually take off, and you could attach your dreaming body to them, and you'll go into these other wormholes that will open up into other realms. So shamans don't come across dreaming easily. They have to do other things and prepare themselves, which is where the magical passes, these specific movements that shamans use, and they also recapitulate as a means to lighten their if you carry a lot of stress and fear and inventory and you think a lot, it's going to be hard to learn how to focus to the degree that you would need in order to do this kind of advanced dreaming. So the recapitulation, well, first the movements give you the energy to focus so you could recapitulate. And all recapitulating is reviewing your memories in a very unique, magical way. So yeah, it's all that's why it's all connected. So it's hard to talk about one of those things without talking about the other two, because they're like a trifecta of sorts that have been discovered as a means to free ourselves from this programming that we find ourselves in.
So in terms of these movements and recapitulation, they all go hand in hand. Because I've done martial arts since I was 15 years old, and that was a huge shift for me. Being able to go past what you talk about, from discipline to impeccability. I think that's such a beautiful way to say it, because it's no longer something that's a chore or something that you're forcing on yourself. It becomes something that you actually enjoy, but you really get into that, I guess, intent. I think you use the word intent because intent, I think the more modern word is said one of your videos, you said it's attention. That's the better word to use, perhaps. And I found that sort of attention and enjoyment of flowing in that, in the energies, because that's ultimately what you're doing. You're moving energy. Um, so
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I find that really fascinating. Yeah.
absolutely, man. Yeah, it's it dreaming attention is what shamans refer to as this energy that gets built up and then it gets used, and so then you have to rebuild it. And so they call it waning. It wanes. Your dreaming attention will wane eventually, and you won't be able to maintain these altered states, or these you won't be able to glimpse aspects of eternity forever. You end up getting pulled back into your normal consciousness. So we want to save energy through either discipline, but either discipline or impeccability, and ideally impeccability, because discipline is in a way repressing, and it's avoiding the shadow which wants to do other things. And so it's kind of dangerous to open this up and recognize, wow, in order to truly tap your power, you have to accept your desires and get to know them, because ultimately that'll lead, your absolute desire is to be free of these limitations. And so your longing will lead you to your power, and that's impeccable, is to follow that desire, because you really do want some of the things you call disciplines are things that you actually have now fallen in love with, so there's no longer a need to force yourself. It becomes something you do purely to express your appreciation for life, because the universe is conscious and observing us, and that may be confronting, but once you accept that, then you realize, wow, this is alive. What I choose to give my attention to, if it is something new and magical and it's forging a new neural pathway, then the universe then lends me extra energy for that. If I'm just doing something that somebody else has already done, I'm not really offering a new trajectory, and therefore there's not as much interest, there's not as much return on investment, there's not as much risk, high reward. So if you're willing to branch out and start to think for yourself and come out of the hive mind, then you're going to discover impeccability. There's plenty of disciplined people out there that do the cold showers and work out and do eat everything perfect and do all the purification programs, but they're focused on, materialism. Typically they're focusing on climbing a ladder and getting laid and all the things that come with, social power. Shamans seek actual power. And in order to do that, they remove the social mask and set it down and they start to let the abstract change them,
Mm.
right? Rather than to control their life or to develop their ego and to conquer businesses or whatever it is that typically the masculine gets excited about. We want to balance that and realize how seductive and entrapping all these things that typically boost the ego are. And that way we start to stalk the ego and start to get to know how it functions, and find a solution to not get, caught in the many ways in which it keeps us from becoming truly, to returning to what we actually are. Because we've been convinced that we're something other than what we are by forces that have been manipulating our perception for a long time now. And things are kind of hitting critical levels in a sense. So those of us that are being called to, do something to alleviate that intent, to alleviate that pressure, and to start to make room and gain access to freedom. Well, we lost Ahmed here. Hopefully he can jump back in. I'll keep talking so that we can potentially send this out. So I'll elaborate a little bit on what I was sharing. It's nothing wrong with being disciplined. It's very, very helpful. It'll allow you to redirect the way in which you, how much energy you exert. You can learn to become really efficient. Hey man, welcome back.
Hey, so sorry, Joel. I don't know what happened there. My Zoom just completely crashed on me.
No worries.
I have a premium with them as well, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
You were talking about the ego, and
yeah.
yeah. Can you? Sorry, I don't know where
Yeah, no
we.
worries. Yeah,
I
just as far as the ego dynamics are like we get to realize how habitual we are, how easy we are to predict. We behave predictably.
Mhm.
The ego is easy to sort of it's easy for these forces that feed off of awareness to sort of influence us to do typical things that the ego does. And so the more we pay attention to people, and we thank the people for showing us all the different ways in which the ego functions, then it's like observing animals or creatures and get to know their quirks. And then you start to become a connoisseur almost of the human form and its behavior. And then you get to know yourself by being willing to look at people and getting, it can be really difficult to come to terms with. It's kind of disturbing to realize the way we are being interfered with, but it's sobering, and it helps make sense of why the world is the way it is. And then you start to have more compassion rather than judge people. You become a witness to them, and that witnessing is liberating, because then you'll start to see energy rather than just witnessing the decrepency of humanity. You start to see, oh, this is fascinating, this is terrifying, this is beautiful, kind of all at the same time. So it's called stalking yourself. You get to really get honest, and that's the shadow work, is the honesty, admitting to the wounds that you have, admitting to the places that you are unconscious. And so if you can find a partner or a friend or people that'll be honest with you, where your ego dynamics are healthy enough that you can be reflective and serve as mirrors for each other. I mentor people. I've had many teachers that have called me out on my on helping me to realize where I'm at by asking details about my life and getting to know how I respond at work and how I show up, and help me to see, oh wow, this, there are just areas in which I avoid facing myself, and by having somebody to help me see that, I've been able to grow and change. And I do the same for people I mentor, people, and it's a real powerful process to face a mirror like myself and get to know, these areas that we just wouldn't be able to see if we didn't have somebody that was willing to truly to call you out.
Mm. It's like it reminds me as well when you're talking about shadow and things like Tezcatlipoca, the the smoking mirror. I believe that's what he's referred to. And the smoke, is that deceiver, isn't it? It's that um illusion that you, or delusion, should I say, that we all face if we don't have those right relationships as well with the right people who are able to become pure mirrors without the smoke for
Yeah,
us. So
absolutely.
yeah, I see that. Yeah. Um so with the there's something that you call the second attention. Is that also part of the dreaming?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that part of that dreaming state?
Dreaming is a gateway to the second attention. And the second attention is referred to as the nawal. There's the tonal and the nawal,
Mm,
or the abstract or spirit. All of these things are interchangeable in a sense, and yet they kind of have their own meaning as well. But the second attention is, there's the first, second, and third attention. And the first attention is everything in this world that, has a name, everything that we label.
mm,
The second attention is, what one discovers when they start to move beyond the linear into the non-linear and
mm,
access, you know, to be on mushrooms, and just all of a sudden the ground is moving beneath your feet, and it's like moving and undulating, and you allow that to stay and continue. Now you're navigating in the second attention.
mm,
As soon as it gets hard again, you're back in the first. And so how do we learn to be in the energetic side and stay there? How do we let our perception move and move and move and keep moving without this rubber band effect where it kind of snaps back? And it's good that it snaps back. Otherwise, we'd end up in mental wards because we wouldn't be ready, right? So
mm,
a warrior prepares themselves for the day in which it stops snapping back and they start to become energy. If you become energy, then you can perceive energy. So we want to let go of the physical world, not permanently. We want to make use of it and enjoy it. Be thankful
mm,
for we manifested physicality. We're energy first. This physical part is kind of a convenience for us, a way of navigating this realm. But it's also now become a trap. Uh, and that's what these forces that interfere are banking on, is that we will not realize that things are not that things are not what they seem. If we really start to unlock the mystery, which has happened in the past, there were entire
mm,
civilizations that were aware of their power. um and so we are now in an opportunity where the veil is lifting for more and more people. um but that's not a concern for shamans. Whether people are coming along for the ride or not, they are seeking freedom through learning to navigate the second attention in a sober way. And by sober, that
mm,
doesn't mean you can't use power plants, but it means being really mature and honest about how much integration work there is to do. And eventually the plants interfere because you don't need
mm,
them, right? They become it's just unnecessary, and they take a tax on our energy body. And so to overuse these things is a risk, a high risk. But I at a young age I went pretty aggressive. um and I'm okay. It's just, knowing how to repair yourself. how to really, because there's damage that happens. And once you learn how to recapitulate and take care of yourself and purify in these other ways, you start to learn, how to bring balance to things that were out of balance within your being.
Mm. I found as well through fasting, because I do a lot of fasting.
Yep, me too.
Um, yeah, and I find that even when I do break the fast or I eat something, I've become so sensitive that I notice how even I mean, as not as much so much with organic fruits and things like that, but even sometimes, to be honest, Joel, I mean, I would have something and I feel my consciousness alter just through having a piece of fruit.
I know.
Um,
Me
so
too.
it's crazy, like how even something we eat alters our consciousness. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah. It's, you learn, it's just part of the deal, becoming that sensitive in the path of purification. But everything's kind of a placebo. And so we learn to control our thoughts in a way in which we can determine how we're going to react to these adjustments. But
mm,
yeah, it's a tricky thing, because I know a lot of people that get kind of caught in that, where Toltecs, like, they don't go too deep into that because they're already purifying with the recapitulation. And so
mm,
to add all these other types of purification can actually be too much. Um, and so because we're not actually physical beings, we're not actually consuming the thing we think we are. We're consuming energy, and we're digesting energy. And the digestion process is uncomfortable when you've been giving your body a break, because it's actually
mm,
designed to go without food for long periods of time, but only if you can keep your assemblage point in a very particular place where it doesn't require that you eat. And that
mm,
starts to happen when you fast. But then it starts to get a little scary, because you go in, your body's starting to like get really, you're starting to get super altered from fasting for too long. And if you don't have sort of your dreaming figured out, then you're gonna just run into some challenges that require some titration, where okay, let's go back into some fruit, let's go back into juicing, and start to hydrate. Hydration's really key. And
mm,
when people really understand how hydrated you can get from fruit versus water, like, fruit is where the magic is, because the water is that grows inside of the fruit is alive, where most of the
mm,
water that we're being given now is dead water. And so it's not actually providing the hydration that we would think it does. um, but ultimately, I know shamans that eat whatever the fuck they want, and it doesn't matter at all, because they're such gifted, focused people that they can move their perception to places that are just very efficient. And it makes they sort of control their reality through their perception, rather than let this information change their willpower. Because some people develop, when they go to purify, eating disorder, because
mm,
all of a sudden you're disgusted by the fact there's so much poison out there, and that we've been eating it unconsciously. And then they start to get really sensitive, and then the shadow says, but I still want the ice cream, or whatever. And then that you binge eat, and then you feel terrible, and then you try to fix it by going back into fasting. And then the shadow comes back and is like, fuck
mm,
that, I want to go party, like, let's, and then all of a sudden you're just like, so it's okay wherever anyone is at. In fact, it's we want to come out of all these idealistic concepts and really just get honest that each person has their own formula, and we all have different traumatic wounds, and different relationships with, I don't even call it addiction, but food addiction is a thing.
mm,
It's probably the most addictive thing there is we're very emotionally connected to what we eat, because we learned to cope with being raised in this MK Ultra program by our parents. We used food as a coping mechanism, because we were feeling we were very sensitive at a young age, and we could tell that something was off in our environment, but we didn't know how to express it. And when we want to express our dissatisfaction, we were told to stop crying and go be alone. We weren't given affection for that typically. And then we were thought, okay, well, that means that's bad. I'm not supposed to express. And then it creates the inversion of our reality where we end up we become hungry ghosts seeking a partner to fill our void, or food or drugs or entertainment or something outside of us, rather than learning to go in and let the emotion rise and truly heal.
What would you say on the flip side? Because sometimes in traumatic situations, you also get anorexia, for example, where there's no eating. It's a complete, flip side of that.
Exactly.
What's your view on that?
It's a good question. I think just in general, it's all associated with the assemblage point and the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? That we've discovered happens, right? And so working with somebody that can help you come to terms with what your coping mechanism is and why in which it keeps you from being able to eat, or all the different things that occur. It's all shadow work, but we have these systems in place where you could go get help from all these people that went to indoctrination schools, and they're trained only to think of things in a particular way, and then they fail us so often to be truly able to offer the guidance and support and space holding that would be needed for the shadow to properly surface, so that the wound can be faced and resolved. And so, it's really difficult to find help that's truly sustainable.
You've talked about these forces. These forces, the flying ones, I think you referred to them. Is it according to the Toltec?
They call them the flyers.
The flyers. That's right. The flyers.
Well, or they also call them mud shadows.
Right. And are these thought forms? Are these parasitical external thought forms that's part of this adversary, that's part of this realm, or is it operating on another realm to this one, or adjacent to this one?
Yeah, we share this world with beings that we can't see. They don't occupy a form like we do. I can see them at times. Others can see them, but it takes learning to see energy rather than attempting to use the eyeballs. So it's more like your entire body observes the presence of certain beings. And so, like, there are entities of the night in the wilderness that one will encounter if they open themselves up too much, or when you're ready. It's a pretty incredible experience. I got opened up at a young age when it was pretty traumatic, and I was afraid, and so things got really difficult. But there are other forces beyond these type. There's all kinds, and in the Castaneda books they kind of explain this, but according to the Toltecs, there's a force that wasn't always here, that is of its own type, that has figured out that is the top of the food chain. It's figured out how to feed off of our awareness by keeping us imprisoned in a perceptual limitation. So as long as we think that this is the only world there is, and we don't learn how to navigate the other layers of the onion, then we're easily manipulated to continue to hand our energy over to these things that we can't see. Just by basically being unconscious when you go to sleep at night, these forces kind of, you may not realize it, you're having a dream and you think you're talking to your aunt or your uncle or your mom, but you're actually interacting with these shape-shifting beings that are playing theater and trying to get a rise out of you so that they can get a little jolt of energy. They live really long lives. They're almost immortal, and we live really short lives. And so they dull their light out really a long period of time, and we use all of our light all at once. And so we've got extra light compared to them. And so they are seeking our light just like a moth to a fire.
Mm.
And it's uncomfortable and disturbing thing to come to terms with, but like I said, it helps us understand why people behave the way they do, because these forces are not only feeding off of us, but they lent us this predator lent us its mind.
Yeah.
So we think we're having thoughts that are ours, like, oh, I'm not good enough, or nobody loves me, or I'm never going to be able to do this or whatever. And we think that's just us talking to ourselves, but it's actually this program running that is, a generic installment, a foreign installment. But you have a natural mind that you had when you were born, and it's kind of taken the back seat. But when you're on psychedelics or something, that natural mind comes forward, and you realize, oh, this is a much more beautiful way to live. And you start to listen to this inner compass, this guidance system that's truly trying to show you what you really are, and what you're capable of, and help you return to this path of heart that kind of was deviated because of this social predator that keeps us social and keeps us from going inward. And so when you're experiencing a lot of fear, it's not necessarily yours. It may be just that this mind virus, or the Siberian knowledge, they call it memory demons. This is why the recapitulation is so important, is because our blueprint is attached to our memories. And so if we could clean up our memories, then we could erase our blueprint and we could live in the now, and we wouldn't be, these memory demons wouldn't be feeding off of our past and manipulating, therefore, our reality. And so in a sense, that's what the recapitulation, or Toltecs call, erasing personal history. It allows you to reclaim on a cellular level. You purify your cells. They're no longer having to carry the past, because the past, present, and the future, they're all happening at the same time. So when you realize that, then you can tap into your future self. You can tap into your past self in strategic ways. And that's where being psychic, or having, direct knowing, I have dreams where are really vivid and detailed, and 10 years later, I walk right into the scene that I dreamt all those years ago. And when you start to trust that, and you start to understand that, then your body knows it's being given a heads up on all these things, because you stop thinking and you start feeling more. Right. And that's the difference. That's why somatic healing is so key, is we have emotion trapped, stored, traumatic stuff trapped in our system. And we want to figure out, get to know it, and find a way to release it, or to let it go, so that it's not determining how we respond to situations. Because how you used to respond to situations is going to determine how you do going forward, unless you clean up the blueprint in some form, which the recapitulation does very well.
So it's a form of spiritual cleansing in a way, isn't it? You're clearing all that lost energy, is it? Because if you've had trauma and so on in those memories, and you haven't recapitulated that, you're missing energy in your cells. Is that right? A way to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, you left energy in the past that was yours to take with you, and you can go back and pick it back up. It's just sitting there waiting for you. You can go just it'll return to you just through your desire for it, but you got to show up, and then it'll come back. And you also purge any energy that you took on from others, and especially in sexual relationships, there's a ton of that. So when you
Mm.
learn how on the out breath of the recapitulation, you're actually releasing acidic memory out your mouth, and they call it puking up your past. And it's really deep work.
Mm.
You know, you can even symbolically like go out and dig a hole in the earth and like give it back to the mother when you're in this state in which you really can release. And it feels incredible and uncomfortable at the same time. It's rather intense. There's lighter versions of this. You don't have to do it as intense. You can start slow and kind of just, you know, breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in the good and release the bad. You don't have to get, you know, however you want to call it. I don't believe in good or bad. But until you get to that point, you want to give yourself these baby steps so that you can eventually do the deeper dive. And so whatever your intuition tells you, some people just review their day at the end of the day, and they just call in any energy they left, and then they push out any energy that they took on. If you have a fight with somebody and then you go and just clear it energetically, then you clear it for them too. They're going to feel better because you cleared your part. It's going to be less, you're not going to be sitting there talking to each other after the fight in your minds, having this telepathic, you know, battle, because you maturely realize, oh, that, you know, I don't want to carry this, and then you eject it. And it's not yours to carry. It's just it's all unnecessary stuff. But we have to retrain ourselves, or we get to
Mm.
retrain ourselves, because the way we're used to doing it is just letting it pile up and pile up and pile up. And we want to purge, we want to purify, but we also want to go back and get our luminosity, which we left
Mm.
with people. They're still running around with our energy, and they don't need it. They might,
Mm.
you might go to get your energy back from an ex-partner and realize they're holding on to it, and we're like, oh shit, this person actually took some power and they knew it, you know. And then you start to realize, oh well, what about me? Did I ever do that? And like, oh yeah, actually I do get a lot of energy when I, you know, like, if you be honest, we aren't, you know, we are strange creatures, and we love energy, and that's what makes sex so incredible, is you're exchanging power with somebody, you know. And
Mm.
so this is a world of power, and we want to come to terms with that, and learn how to interact in this realm of power. And that will make everything more alive and intense and realistic, and you become more authentic.
Mm.
The dance.
That comes back to the impeccability, doesn't it, as well? I mean, when we talk about as a man, as a male, in physical form at least, you know, what's our responsibilities when it comes to, because I feel like the act of sex is very sacred. It's very like you said, it's energy exchange, and we have to be very conscious, and our attention has to be completely aware in that moment. What is our role as men when we are in relation to the woman, in relation to the feminine, even though we have the feminine within us as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a really beautiful opportunity to become a conscious, you know, container. As the masculine, you can be a container for the feminine to rise and to become wild and powerful again. Because
Mm.
the in a balanced system, you know, a woman would guide a man to his soul and really help him reach his intuition, and then the man would ward and protect that woman so that she could explore and discover and be the scout for the family, the one to intuit what needs. And the man then goes out essentially and, uh, you know, follows through with that vision.
Mm.
Um, Women are really gifted energetically, and men are really gifted physically. And if we could both work together in a beautiful way, you know, my elder used to say there's only two tribes, there's the tribe of man and the tribe of woman. And if we could build a bridge to each other and learn to really honor each other, instead of trying to control one another, or anticipate, or manipulate, or seduce, or all the things that come with the social power, if we can really go inward and heal our heart and become whole, then we show up and we will manifest a whole partner, somebody that's also done the work. And then those two people can face each other and really gain and discover, especially people that are coming out of the programming, can really forge new territory. We still have all these old conditions upon us from the past, and we're in a new time, and we want to start to discover what is possible. And so you can purify your perception, if for men that get caught in porn and stuff, that can be really tricky. So if you're in fantasy at all, if you could keep that within the container of the field where you're focused on your relationship with your partner rather than thinking of other women, then there's an energetic difference. And that's a big threshold to cross in the relationship for a lot of people, is to keep the focus within the couple and really give it a chance. Because if you're really just looking for your way out, or you're trying to think, how am I gonna, I'm gonna get hurt eventually here, so I'm gonna need a way to hurt them back, and all these different things just completely pollute the possibility of there being these breakthrough moments. And these fights and things aren't bad. We were meant to go through and get to know each other through getting to the place where we can truly be honest about what we're feeling. But often it's projecting onto each other and blaming the other person, and then the fights don't really get us anywhere. But we want to tap into our anger, and it is our power. But we want to find healthy ways to tap into it, so we're not taking it out on others, especially our partners or family. And so conscious lovemaking is more tantric and less about outcome or orgasm. You start to learn to stay in pure affection, and you can reach really beautiful type of communication, because sexual energy and dreaming energy are the same thing. And so you can learn to do lucid dreaming with your partner, and you can almost like mix it, where you're learning how to celebrate your bodies together, but also then while that energy builds up, you can almost stop and then go into silence together. And it's an absolute game changer to be able to, hang out in that place without it being about the physical anymore. And then all of a sudden you discover a level of affection that goes way beyond these perceived limitations that we tend to keep ourselves in. And so there's just a whole realm of discovery that can be made, but it usually takes quite a bit of honesty and go through some trials together, and really the trust can't be just, it doesn't happen without going through hard times and realizing that, okay, this person has proven to really be able to face themselves and make these adjustments, and therefore is proving that there's this incredible calling within their being. Otherwise they would have took off. And so if you're following a vision and truly listening to spirit, then you'll know what you're waiting for, and you won't settle, and you'll be willing to be alone and celibate rather than sacrifice that, because the universe is paying attention. And if you're out just doing whatever, and there's nothing wrong with it, sex is powerful and amazing, and shamans have multiple wives sometimes, and I'm not saying that there's not other options out there, but when you really, really understand the benefit of being with just one person and how powerful that can be, and you get a taste of it, you would do anything to have access to it. And that often is being very patient and being willing to just really reevaluate your priorities.
Beautiful, beautiful. I find also in relation to that, when we talked about um porn, and obviously porn is part of the agenda, as you know. It's it's also going back to the dreaming, when men have wet dreams, for example. I feel this comes back to the dreaming, and being able to be awake in your dreams, because I feel like when men have wet dreams, I feel like it's these forces that you talk about are trying to steal your energy through this
Yeah, that's great.
so-called, what we're told is natural, natural. Oh, it's only natural for men, to have it, but it can be further from the truth.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's when you start to save your sexual energy during stages of celibacy, you'll really come to discover that this is a whole thing. Semen retention leads to challenges in your dreams. And so it's an incentive to stay conscious. You can, sometimes you're unconscious and then it's starting to go there in your dream, and you can wake yourself up, and that helps understand how to sort of be more alert and aware, and it inspires you to get more in tune. And so it's a real discovery process, and it is the way these forces, they use sex not only in dreams, but because they lend us their mind. Often we are in our daily life very sexually focused, as a distraction from unlocking these other layers of the onion. So when you can learn to take your sexual frustration and let it turn into, a focus of learning to see the world in a different way and soften your perception, you'll realize it's the same energy. Sexual energy and dreaming energy can be applied. And so there's a reason why the flyers make sure that we stay focused on sex, or the fear of not having a partner, or these very lower chakra based fear things. Shadow work is about facing the lower chakras, and a lot of spiritual people are talking about staying in the upper ones only. That's not Toltec. That's insane. That's going to lead to all kinds of backfiring. Celibacy can cause schizophrenia, because if you're forcing it and not admitting to where you are at, then your that discipline will become a real challenge. It can be really dangerous and tricky. And so I highly recommend people not lie to themselves or try to speed this process up. You have the time, give yourself, room to discover all of your feelings, and not try to bypass anything, and admit to what you want, and be willing to speak it, and get to the place where you're not denying yourself your true desire. And then getting to understand how incredible that energy is and what it can be used for, and eventually you'll desire to use it in the most advantageous way, which hopefully is a balance of having a powerful partner that you can be with, as well as using that energy, saving it, and with respect to your partner, at times having breaks, long periods where you're just letting that energy build. And that makes, people say you be together for 20 years and sex gets boring, and it's not if you're building the energy and building the affection, and you're not going into the linear but staying in the non-linear with that energy. It actually gets stronger and stronger and more incredible, and it just opens more and more doors. So shamans have figured out all the solutions to all of our problems. It's just a matter of being willing to stop our mind long enough to really let them sink in, and start to change the trajectory of our focus.
Yeah, it's also the awareness as well of that mind that they've given us.
Yeah.
So I mean, I find that even in especially when you use psychedelics, for example, you become very aware of it because it's almost like a parasite that's latched onto you, onto your consciousness or onto your soul, and it's really like there's a certain vigilance you have to have all the time because that voice tends to creep in and take over you if you're not careful, you
Does
know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's if you can. That's why stopping the internal dialogue is what Toltecs recommend, is because it can't. The only reason it can remain attached is because the thought, because the dialogue is running, it gives it control. But when
Mm,
you learn to flood your perception, where you're seeing so much beauty, listening to so much incredible sound, smelling so much incredible life, breathing in, like if you can really flood your being, then you're able to hold silence for longer and longer periods of time. And if you can stay in silence for not even that long, eventually you'll cross this threshold and you'll start to be able to, start to understand what unbending intent really is. And once you have a relationship with intent, um, you now are on a path of being able to um, have beautiful, allow the seer to be the one that's guiding you rather than this parasite. But the parasite is there, and
mm,
it's not something you can shake. um I mean, you could for a few hours maybe when you're on psychedelics or something. um but so there's all types. When you're in Most people don't graduate from one program to the next, but like as you start to escape the original programming of like the junior high school way of looking at the world, a lot of people stay in that for life.
mm,
But some of us graduate from that, and then there's a new type of flyer that shows up, and it's more intelligent because now you have more consciousness, so it has to try to hijack you in a different way. And then you graduate from that one, and then a new version is replaced. And there's like almost like moments where one goes away and the other one comes in, and there's this incredible relief, and you don't realize what's happening. And so we go through all these different versions of the same thing, and eventually if you start to really get outside of it, it's going to try to think long term how it can come in and derail you from becoming free from it. So we will always deal with this, and in a way it's a perfect teacher. It's offering us the most difficult sort of obstacle course in a sense, by
mm,
constantly out trying to outsmart us. So as you evolve, your ego evolves.
mm. Beautiful. Um, so another thing I wanted to just touch upon as well lightly is what is the infinite to you? I mean, when we talk about the infinite, it's such a the word itself is such a it has a very wide range, doesn't it?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I just want to know what it is for you, Joel.
I mean, to me it's the mystery, and mysteries aren't things you can really explain. You can
Mm,
experience them, right? And when you are with the mystery, when the mystery is being unveiled to you, there's no need to explain it to yourself. You're just so in so much gratitude for being in the presence of um, this intelligence. It's like spirit has this most the infinite is, it's incomprehensible, and yet it isn't.
mm,
And there's a contradiction with every truth like that. Everything matters, absolutely. Every single thing, every thought, every feeling, every breath, every moment, and yet nothing matters whatsoever. How could it? It's just, it's all level. It's just they cancel each other out, and all truth is discovered through those contradictions. And so we're just so fortunate to be coming out of the linear and moving into the nonlinear, where we don't have to validate these things because they've been validated for us. We don't need others to believe us. We don't need to write a book about these experiences. We could. A lot of people do. They have an assemblage point shift and then they think they met God and they write a book, and that's cool. But if they keep going, if they realize that they just scratched the surface, then they wouldn't get caught in religion or get caught in drama or story or trying to explain things. And they would start seeking questions rather than answers. They'd allow their curiosity to activate. Your imagination is your power. If you can return to your youth and get that part of you that was blocked to now get unblocked, you can navigate this realm in ways that just is so beautiful that it's almost too much. It's almost too much joy. You open yourself up to the most incredible feelings to move through you. Most people spend their life feeling the same feelings over and over. Shamans lift the lid and just find a treasure trove of feelings that they cut themselves off from around 4 years old. And you go back and you start tapping that pure affection, and you just start to travel within the realm of feeling. And Don Juan in the book says, in the Castaneda books, he said, all we are is a feeling, and everything we're interacting with is a feeling. We've attributed a physicality to it and labeled all of these things and whatnot. But when you break free of that linear, you start to swim in the energetic side of things, and you're no longer needing to document or take inventory of what's happening to you. You start to trust the process so completely that you become fluid, and you understand that on a cellular level everything is being, that you basically everything's being recorded. Your cells record every experience, and that's why when you die your life flashes before your eyes, because that inventory is being released. Shamans choose to review that inventory through the recapitulation prior to their death. And because of that, the force that consumes our awareness when we die will grant you passage to keep your memory, to keep your awareness, and to merge with the third attention without being recycled. And that's why shamans are so fierce and focused, is that they actually are preparing themselves for death, but not the type of death that most people are going to have.
And what is the third attention? Because we talked about the second,
Yeah,
the third being
the first and second attention. The third attention is the first and second attention combined.
Okay.
Right. And so there is infinite potential. And some people would say the third attention is the infinite. It is the abyss. It is the great mother, the primordial, just, the realm in which you become the creator. You build worlds, you build systems, you choose. And that's probably what we're in, is someone else's construction, some magical being with an intelligence that's so vast and beautiful that to encounter the creator force is to meet yourself. But then people go around saying, I'm God and I'm the thing, and it's not meant to like boost the ego. It's meant to just understand that you're not separate. And yet you have the opportunity, having become individuated, to make use of that individuation and create your own reality. And so you are separate. Again, the contradiction, it's really incredible. It's like a spiral and a loop, and it doesn't need to have a beginning and an end.
Yeah, it's a paradox in itself. I think that's what this is. I mean, once you get into the deeper layers, It's like when you get past the words and you get into feeling, you go past language is no longer almost needed sometimes because you're able to, especially when you're with somebody else who gets that, who sees energy and feels it, you're able to communicate in those ways. Um, but yeah, thank you so much, Joel. I mean, I just do. Is there any kind of final words you'd like? Because I've really enjoyed this, and I'd love to have you on again, um, and dive a bit deeper into, um, you know, the other thing actually I wanted to ask you, if I may, um, there is a lot of Dominic. I can only speak from the UK. There's a lot of medicine circles, and I've been around, not that I participated in them, but I've seen a lot of disconnect from the ancient teachings and especially the Toltec wisdom, and I just wonder, like, is there some sort of agenda going on here or something where people are getting harvested for through these medicine circles, and I'm sad to see it, but when I do see it, I just see people that are unintegrated, who
Yeah,
are using ayahuasca and all these other plant medicines, and there seems to be this sort of subculture where none of them know even what shadow work is, and they're doing all this thinking they're healing, and
yeah,
when you actually meet these people, they're far, very far from it, and huge egotists.
totally. Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it is hard to kind of come to terms with, and but it's the reality. I There was a time of forgetting when we were like our memories were being like genetically interfered with. And so what was left of these traditions is sort of like a really fractured um, attempt to reenact something that was once had power that no longer does. And it's kind of pathetic and sad and culty. Um, and but these are shadow teachers that are running these circles, and they're offering these people an opportunity to see, hopefully, that it's a dead end. And some of the people that are lying to themselves might wake up someday and have an incredible story to tell by getting out of these cults.
Mm,
I'm one of those people. I was in a medicine circle. I was in deep, and it was I part of me knew, and part of me was lying to myself, and then another part of me realized I was there for a reason, and like my higher self guided me through it because I gained so much from it. It gave me such a kind of terrifying, intense reflection of just how unconsciousness works.
mm,
Because when you're promoting consciousness and talking about all these things and you're doing the opposite, it's just such an inverted, almost perverted experience to be a part of, because it's just it's so not authentic. And yet, there can be moments within those people's lives where they have something happen that really wakes them up, and so I would say that all of these things are contracts that they play a role, and it's good to become sober and clear and observe it and not sugarcoat it, but it's also we want to recognize that everything that's going on is has a purpose. We may not understand it at this time, but just like I grew up with some pretty powerful people, some of them showed me how not to be, and some of them showed me very heart-based ways of being. And so it's good to have these examples, and in a way we want to thank all of these people for showing us these disturbing aspects of life. But yeah, I hope people discover that. I think the Toltecs are the learned ones. They're the scientists of energy. And it's very confronting to talk Toltec stuff with Native American people who are caught in these traditions that they don't, that have started to become corrupted, because all that ceremony and ritual, all of it, none of it's needed. It becomes a distraction, and it's a way of becoming spiritually special. And we want to move out of specialness into to a more raw, honest acknowledgement that we don't matter any more than anyone else, and that a king and the beggar are on the same, they're on the same page, they have the same luminous cocoon that surrounds their physicality, and their relationship with eternity is on equal terms. So these idea that shamans have an advantage over somebody else, and it's not true. It's a really, this world of power is very tricky and seductive, and those medicine circles bank on misusing power as a means to seduce and attract people so that they can borrow energy from them in order to do the things that so shamans do steal energy, especially from women, as a means to advance their dreaming even. So
Wow.
yeah, it's really intense the way these energy exchanges work. And yeah, so be thankful that you didn't have to get caught in it, because it can be really, your ego wants to defend things, right? So even when you realize something's off, you don't want to have to go admit, I just spent the last so many years caught in this thing. You end up sticking around longer and longer just because you don't want to face and admit to things, and that's how complex we are. It's tricky.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one should always be cautious when going into that, and to arm oneself with knowledge, right? I mean, that knowledge of self really ultimately.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the
yeah.
shadow work is key. That way we don't end up trying to find a way around it, and because these
Mm,
medicine circles try to tell you all you have to do is you know do this and this, and you'll be a shaman. And it's like fake martial arts schools. Some of them are just handing out black belts, and it's like, it's such a dishonor to
mm,
just lie to people like that, and to make them feel special when they're, all they did was just show up and pay the fees.
mm. In a way, they're probably unconsciously being controlled by these very same forces
Exactly.
that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the disturbing part, is that it's
Yeah.
really not these people. It's just that they have shadow wounds that are undealt with, and now they have attachments and entities and hooks and implants that are basically manipulating them and using them. And that goes all the way up to the vampiric stuff, all the hardcore, sorcery that goes on in Europe and
Mm,
all over the world, that is being, it's really, these are not, this isn't just happening because these people uh decided to do this. These people are possessed. Possession is run rampant.
mm,
And the whole world needs serious exorcism work, and yet one can do the Toltec work and have their own soul retrieval through the recapitulation, and you don't need anybody. And that's what's so threatening about it, is it sort of takes out the middleman, and these middlemen want to stay being of service so that they can get whatever they get out from it. And yeah, it's all connected.
mm. That's what I love about what you share, and I really appreciate you, Joel. Thank you. Is there any final words you'd like to finish off with, and or
Sure, yeah, I mean, just
yeah?
you know being having a relationship with the mother is always, it can always get deeper. Our breath work can always get more dialed in, so getting out into nature, and getting your bare feet on the earth, and allowing these roots to grow. So you feel like, in martial arts we learn to get really rooted, and so you can actually feel an extension of your energy going deeper and deeper into the earth as you learn how to anchor and connect with her. And incredible things happen when we do that. So I've been doing it for a long time, but I still gain more and more from it every time I do it. So it's a great way to sort of always take care of yourself, is to, even though you may not think you have the time, you can usually make it. And it doesn't have to be way out in the woods. It can just be somewhere, a piece of grass, or And if worse comes to worse, the Earth Mother is below the concrete too. You can just connect with her anytime, or in a skyscraper. And that's where things get really liberated, is when you have access to her regardless of where you are. So
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joel. Really
yeah,
appreciate you.
too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, look forward to next time, man.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Thank you.